Good afternoon, candidates, and welcome to the Park Forum. Right now, we are showing our Parks platform. We will start in a few minutes. Okay, it seems like we have technical issues, but my name is Annalise Figueroa Garcia, and I have been a Bronx resident living in the Highbridge neighborhood for 15 years. While the Bronx is known as the greenest borough and has the largest percentage of park acreage of any borough in New York City, many Bronx residents do not have the access to park nearby or near park spaces inaccessible to them. As part of the Bronx Parks Speak Up, our vision is to provide all Bronxonites access to parks and develop a network of safe connections between existing parks. Additionally, while the Bronx has the most parkland, it doesn't mean that we have funding, staffing, resources to properly maintain the park's maintenance. We are hosting this candidate forum to bring attention to equitable funding to parks in the Bronx. Now I'm going to go over the guidelines for the forums. Candidates, please be aware that this is a webinar and your mic will be open so you will be able to mute and unmute yourself. Please be mindful of your time and keep to any rules we have established. The program is a 5-minute introduction for each. When I called you, please introduce yourself. Please introduce yourself. And when I called you, please introduce yourself. I'm sorry. The time manager will use a green card at 1 minute, a yellow card at 30 seconds, and the red card at 10 seconds reminding.
Excuse me, Annalise.
I will introduce a translator soon. The second part of the program will be a Q&A from the panel anytime from the public attending of Facebook streaming. You will have a minute to answer. The time manager will use a green screen or card to 30 seconds and red screen at 10 seconds. We have translation to Spanish. Tenemos traducción al español. Por favor, traductora, ayúdenos con las instrucciones. Señora traductora.
Sí, gracias. Bueno, mi nombre es Alba Mota. Soy una de las intérpretes del día de hoy. My name is Alba Mota. I'm one of the interpreters for today's forum. Solo quiero dar unos pautas de la justicia del lenguaje. Cuando esté hablando, por favor, hable despacio para poder hablar, para poder interpretarle de una manera más eficiente. También, por favor, hable al micrófono para poder escucharle. También le pedimos que por favor hable una persona a la vez. No queremos elegir a quién interpretar. También queremos reconocer que hay otros idiomas representados en este espacio, aunque no lo podemos interpretar todos, pero queremos también reconocerlo y que estamos también en tierra invadida. Entonces también queremos reconocer esos idiomas en tierra invadida donde estamos ahora mismo paradas y parados. Cuando pongan en la función de interpretación, si estás en una computadora vas a ver un globito, le vas a dar ese globito, elegir el idioma en que quieres escuchar y luego le va a decir listo, ok, o listo, o como sea, pero tienes que elegir y poner en silencio el audio original para que no escuche dos voces a la misma vez, pero nada más escuche la del intérprete. Good afternoon, my name is Alba. I'm one of the interpreters along with Carly, and I just want to provide some language justice protocol that we use to make interpretation more efficient. A couple of them are, when you are speaking, please speak slowly, spread the words so we could catch up with you. and do the interpretation more efficiently. Also, speaking to the mic so we can hear what you're saying. Also, please keep it one person at a time while we say one mic. That one is really important because we don't want to choose which voice to interpret over the other. We also acknowledge and recognize we recognize that there are all other languages represented here, even though we're not able to interpret all of them. We also want to acknowledge and that we are in taken land that was taken, and we also want to acknowledge that as well. Once the interpretation feature gets turned on, there's going to be a globe underneath your screen, and you're going to click on it, choose the language you want to hear the interpretation to. If you speak Spanish, you will select Spanish. If you want to hear in English, then you press English and press done. If you don't press that, you won't be able to select the language. I just want to make what Annalise said in English. I just want to make a quick review because I know people were asking for it. So if it's okay with the time person that I said, because I don't know if you can repeat it again. The instructions were given just in English. I just want to check in if I could do there a little what you said in Spanish. There's time for that.
Hi, manager, do we have time for that interpretation?
Because it didn't happen at the beginning.
Right.
Yes.
Quickly, please.
Okay. Bienvenido al foro de candidatos de los presidentes del condado del Bronx, bienvenido al foro de candidatos del condado del Bronx, los parques del Bronx alzan su voz. Tenga en cuenta que este es un seminario web y su micrófono estará abierto para que no pueda desactivarlo en silencio. Tenga en cuenta que tenga en cuenta el tiempo y cumpla con las demás reglas que se hayan establecido. El programa es una introducción de 5 minutos para cada candidato. Se la va a llamar en orden. Preséntese y hable sobre los temas relacionados a lo que se refiere a los parques. El administrador del tiempo utilizará un papel verde, amarillo, rojo durante 1 minuto, 30 segundos o 10 segundos restantes. La segunda parte del programa será de preguntas y respuestas de un panel. Y si en el momento también el público asistente que está transmitiendo por Facebook también puede participar en esto. Tendrá un total de 1 minuto para responder. El administrador del tiempo utilizará otra vez un papel verde, rojo durante 30 segundos y cuando quedan también 10 segundos. El tiempo es muy escaso, así que no se ceda del tiempo. Las reglas del chat: participe en el chat de Facebook, coloque la bienvenida al foro. Bienvenido al foro de candidatos de los parques del Bronx alzan su voz. Por favor, tómese el tiempo para ingresar su nombre completo, correo electrónico y si pertenece a algún grupo comunitario. También aquí se establecen contactos, sea respetuoso y no participe en ataques personales. Deberá referirse a las discusiones de hoy sobre sobre este espacio. También para los candidatos, si tiene alguna pregunta para los candidatos, utilice las preguntas y respuestas, la parte de ese Q&A, para así hacer sus preguntas. Estas preguntas serán monitoreadas dependiendo del tiempo que tengan, se presentarán a todos los candidatos. Puede acceder a la función de preguntas y respuestas donde le dije en la pantalla abajo y puede... sí, y recuerde que las preguntas que los candidatos vayan a responder sean preguntas que ellos puedan responder. Las publicaciones ofensivas pueden eliminarse y a las personas que publiquen estos elementos pueden ser eliminados del grupo discretamente por discreción del moderador del chat. Okay.
Thank you so much, Alda. And we have another interpreter, but we have to continue with the program because our time is very short. So quick, before candidates, thank you so much. But before we have to say the instructions of the chat in English, I will go quickly. Joseph Sanchez will be moderating the Zoom chat. And you can also put your questions in Facebook Live and in Zoom. And please, please put your name, and if you are from any other organization, please put your organization. Someone needs to mute themselves, please. And thank you. And please, this is for networking, so please don't be offensive. We reserve the right to remove any offensive remarks in the chat. And this chat is for park questions only. Thank you, candidates. So right now, we're gonna go to Natalia Hernandez with her 5 minutes introduction.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Saturday. In a way, good thing that we don't have to be out in the rain, but our parks are getting a nice, good drink. I'm Assemblywoman Natalia Hernandez. I represent the 80th Assembly District in the Northeast Bronx. That is a neighbor and home to some of the biggest and most beautiful parks in the Bronx. My district has Pelham Parkway and Mosholu Parkway, and I am neighbor to Pelham Bay Park and Van Cortlandt Park. And this conversation is always so refreshing and welcoming every year. And I thank everyone for putting this together because this conversation is important, especially to the borough of the Bronx. We are the greenest borough. We said that here. We know we got the most park space. We need, and it's almost so obvious to say that we need a higher park budget. There's more ground to cover. There's more maintenance. Our Bronx residents utilize our parks for recreation, a sanctuary, a place to be with family, and to really find that peace in our borough. And now during COVID, we've seen how important our park space is. I myself, during the high points of quarantine, have taken the free time that I did have to explore our beautiful parks here all over the borough. And the appreciation, as far as I've seen, has only grown in most recent years and most recent months and to this day. And I thank this collaborative right here to keep this conversation alive and going. But we must keep it alive and going because our health is at risk for it. Our parks help keep really the air clean. We know that trees purify our air. So it's important to protect our green spaces and make sure, slow down, okay. We know it's important to protect our green spaces here, but how? Funding brings us more maintenance workers. As much as our parks are used, because a lot of the time they are our backyards, they are our neighbors' backyards. We need to make sure that the follow-up and the education to our community members about why our park spaces are so important and the need to help protect it is alive and well. When we talk about, beautifying our neighborhoods, our community needs to be a part of that. Our community loves to be a part of that. I myself have great community associations that I work with, including Friends of Mosholu Parkland, Friends of Mosholu Parkway. I've been happy to support their efforts because sometimes we see that Parks Department isn't able to do all the things that we know needs to be done, like extra plant bulbing, park cleanups, education about why certain plants are needed in our parkways. Just today, I saw a video about a berry tree that is one of the plants that can purify the air up to like 20%. These are things that we should be incorporating in our park spaces to help the issues that affect the Bronx, like air quality. As borough president, I absolutely will be a loud voice for our parks because we are the greenest borough. And in that same sense and context, we should be investing in all green infrastructure and being very socially conscious of every decision that we make and how it will affect our public green spaces. Sorry, again, slow down. But it's important to have this investment and this knowledge and to support the love for our parks, because between our playgrounds and our community gardens and really educating on the importance of having that knowledge of environmental justice and having that knowledge about what our park spaces mean to communities is something we must teach in each and every day in our school curriculums, incorporating urban farming into our curriculums, making sure that people understand that there is ways to be sustainable outside of depending on government and everyone to do things for you. But I welcome the questions here today. I thank you again for this conversation. And yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Natalia. And before we go to our council member, Ms. Vanessa Gibson, I have to say that if you have any questions that you want to pose to the candidates, please put it in the Q&A section. The Q&A section can be reached. I will tell you right now. The Q&A session will be, you will find, the Q&A function is at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see the Q&A, tap the three dots to find it. Remember, questions for candidates go to the Q&A. Thank you so much. Council member Vanessa Gibson, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Annalise. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much to Bronx Park Speak Up, to each and every one of you. Blessed Saturday. I hope and pray that all of you are healthy, well, and safe and your families are well. We are living in some challenging times, and I am reminded that our work is not done. We have had a global pandemic that has hit this country almost a year ago, and we have to continue to do the work that is necessary to uplift our children, our families, and really provide so much opportunity and investment in this great borough. I am Council Member Vanessa L. Gibson. I am thankful that for the past 8 years, I've had the honor of serving as Council Member of District 16 in the West Bronx. The communities of Claremont, Claremont Village, Concourse, Concourse Village, High Bridge, Mount Eden, Morris Heights, and Morrisania. We are proud to represent the High Bridge, the oldest standing walking bridge in the country that opened up right here in our great borough. I am proud to represent the only state park in Bronx County, which is Roberto Clemente State Park. I'm also very proud to represent Claremont Park, McCombs Dam Park, Grant Park, Mullally Park, Bridge Park, Corporal Fisher, as well as working closely with Councilmember Ayala in addressing Joyce Kilmer and France Siegel, my neighboring parks that we never forget about. And during my time in the City Council, I have supported efforts, council initiatives like Park Equity that will bring access and opportunity to our parks, our advocates groups, our Friends of Parks groups, and all of our community partners. And I thank all of you. During this pandemic, you have hosted a number of cleanup events because all of you recognize that unfortunately, due to the pandemic and a serious fiscal crisis of $9 billion deficit, we cut the Parks Department's budget heavily. We did not invest in seasonal workers, gardeners, playground associates, parks workers, and PEP officers. And that had a real impact on our quality of life. Our parks, open spaces, and playgrounds are our greatest assets and our greatest treasures. And as it has been said, we have to continue to invest. We have to continue to focus on health and wellness and self-help. And making sure that we deal with mental health and therapeutic services and really understand the strong correlation between parks, open spaces, and quality of life, the reduction of asthma rates and truck traffic and pollution and noise and unstable housing. All of those things are so very prevalent in our borough. Yes, we are one of the greenest boroughs in the city, but what does it mean if we don't invest in our parks and playgrounds? As council member, I've had the honor of working with my colleagues in the delegation, and through the Jerome Neighborhood Plan, we have invested to date $25 million for a brand new Grant Park in our district, $4.6 million for a brand new Bridge Playground, which I'm so excited about. We've invested $4 million for a brand new Corporal Fisher Playground, all in High Bridge at Community Board 4, because the residents demanded that. As we build housing, as we look at the increase in population, we have to look at the impact on our treasures and assets, our school system, the burden on our parkland. And during the pandemic, when a lot of families were in their homes, children learning remotely, our parks were utilized like never before. So yes, education and outreach, critical, and making sure that we allow people a space to use parks, but we also make sure that we curb behavior. We look at recycling programs and composting programs and making sure that we reduce food waste, because there is a strong correlation between our open spaces and parks and food insecurity and what we have been experiencing at a local level. So yes, farming, urban agriculture, community gardens, our green thumbs, growing our own fruits and vegetables right in our neighborhoods. Shout out to all the volunteers that really spend so much time growing fruits and vegetables. That is what the Bronx is all about. And I assure you, and am committed as a candidate for Bronx Borough President, I will take all of that experience, 8 years being in the City Council, 4 years being in the State Assembly, and apply all of that to the Bronx Borough President's office. The Borough President has access to millions of dollars in capital funding. And so we can't just talk about it, we have to be about it. We have to invest dollars where our commitment is and build more parks, renovate our parks. I want every park to have a comfort station, a playground, a basketball field, and as well as a soccer field. I think we have to look beyond some of the traditional sports like basketball and baseball and look at other opportunities like lacrosse, like karate. So many things that we're doing in our communities and all of the CBOs that are providing these services. So I look forward to working with all of you, and I thank you Bronx Parks for all of your work. I remember this annual event that's normally held at Lehman College, but I'm really grateful that we are joining together here today. And I look forward to working with you in my final year in the City Council and as your candidate for Bronx Borough President. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vanessa Gibson, Council Member. Now we are going to the Q&A questions. Please, before we start going on that, we encourage our public attending this event to put your questions either in Facebook or here in the Q&A section. Now, I have the pleasure to introduce Dart Westfall. He is going to help us, and he's going to begin with the Q&A session from our panelists. Dart.
Thank you very much. The first question concerns the practice of requiring public-private partnerships who are taking the lead on our biggest parks and our community gardens to indemnify the city for activities in the park. As Borough President, how would you handle this?
We have to closely monitor the work that they're doing and not doing. For our bigger parks, we know we need that extra assistance. So utilizing the partnerships and investors that we have here already is something that could be used for the greater benefit. But at the same time, we don't want them to throw in their ideas or their interest into what our public spaces should be. So that transparency is important when it comes to what the Borough President's Office can allow, won't allow, will allow, and what the people actually want and need. So conversations need to be frequent. There needs to be constant check-ins to make sure that what is happening and that partnership and investment in there is happening for the benefit and only the interest of our park goers.
Thank you. I believe that public-private partnerships can be an incredible asset, but it has to be done in a responsible way. As Bronx Borough President, I will have those conversations with many of our private partners, many of our partners in the philanthropy community as well, and look at opportunities at expansion and growth. We understand government cannot do it all, but we are grateful for the incredible work of our Parks Department. Our Borough Commissioner, Iris Rodriguez, is amazing. And one thing I say about Iris, and we all agree, she is out there with us in the trenches, cleaning up parks and providing, so much, because we realize that we are all in this together. Public-private partnerships have the ability to provide the investment that is needed, but it has to be done with some sort of a tangible agreement. I am not afraid of MOUs and memorandums of understanding and so many community benefits agreements that many of us are used to with some of the larger projects that we've embarked on over the years in the Bronx. I think it has to be tailored to be beneficial primarily to all of the residents in that local community, working with the local community board, working with park advocates and stakeholders, and so many of our local CBOs, and putting together our priorities as we have these conversations. Being the Bronx Borough President allows me that space and that platform to have conversations and negotiate. But at the end of the day, while I may be the leader, I am not leading this alone. This is a part of a conversation, and we are a village and we are partners and we are all sitting at the table, because we do have to make sure that private interest does not, dissuade us from doing this work, and certainly doesn't conflict with our values and what we fundamentally believe we want to see. Understand that all of the work that we're doing, these investments in our parks, open spaces, access to waterfront, this is about building a sustainable Bronx, a Bronx that has longevity, that builds opportunity, that builds local jobs with all of the sustainability projects we're talking about. But equally as important, it creates the next generation of leaders. So they understand that you have to look within at our treasures, at our beautiful parks and open spaces, and make sure that you invest in those just as you invest in everything else that's important to us in the Bronx.
Thank you. The second question is, according to the city charter, as Bronx Borough President, you would be responsible for reviewing the expense and capital budgets. How will you use this process to increase program and maintenance staffing for parks? In the same order.
Well, that information is everything we need to show what we need to help support our parks. The numbers don't lie, as everyone says. And if we're showing that we are getting constant requests for more maintenance staff or or attention to areas, we need to see how much that costs. And in analyzing this and creating, I guess, a budget of what everything we do need and are currently utilizing in a year will be the information to go forth and use this as our argument. This is what our parks need. This is how much it costs to maintain, but understanding seasonal shifts and seasonal increases in attendance, these things change, and we need to make sure that we have the support and the numbers there showing it to properly give the resources to our parks and park goers.
That's a great question. We're actually going through that right now in the City Council. Our budget hearings start on Tuesday for the FY22 budget. And last Thursday, the Borough Board met, of which every council member in the delegation has a representative, as well as all of our community board chairpersons, all 12 community boards here in the Bronx. And they put forth their recommendations from a community board level. It goes to Borough Board for a vote, and the Borough President considers all of those different priorities from community boards 1 through 12 and formulates the Borough President's recommendations on the fiscal year's budget priorities, both from a discretionary perspective as well as capital. So as Borough President, I am very familiar with the city's budget process, of which I've been a part of for the past 8 years. It is very critical to have a voice from the borough because you have to work closely with your delegation as well as the speaker and the Office of Management and Budget. There are big ticket items like the renovation of Orchard Beach, like the Universal Hip Hop Museum, the Bronx Children's Museum, a number of housing projects that we've passed over the last several years. Those are priority. But when it comes to parks, absolutely. We're talking about multi-million-dollar projects that span over multiple fiscal years. We've been able to make incredible investments already in phase 1 of Orchard Beach, and now we're going to phase 2 because we've been able to work closely with our partners in the state and the federal government to get a number of support. But as Borough President, the voices of the community board is so critically important. Local parks in their districts that have not gotten attention, that need the infusion of capital dollars is important. One other program that I will always fight for, and I have been, is $10 million for 100 parks workers that we've been able to maintain year after year in the City Council. It is a City Council add-on that we fight for every year, and that supplements the additional park workers that are already on staff. But that's not enough. We know we need more playground associates, more seasonal workers, more gardeners. We need to look at SYEP and make sure that we can develop and recruit young people to work in our parks as a summer youth job, because we have to recruit young people and allow them a space to be in their own communities, making sure their parks are maintained. All of that is critically important, but once again, the voice of the community board and their leadership is critical. And as Borough President, I will make sure that all of their recommendations are considered as I formulate my priorities as Borough President.
Thank you. For the next pair of questions, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Joyce Hoagie. Joyce?
Thank you, Dart. And thank you, candidates, for attending our forum today. Needless to say, this is a very unusual Bronx Park Speak Up. We've never done this before. So everybody is sort of jumping in head first. My questions have really been already been answered, both in your introductions and in Dart's questions to you. But I have a particular concern about the usage of our parks. We live in an area that, as you know, Vanessa, lots of families, they use the parks as their front yards and their backyards. Everybody primes for the holidays to come or the warm weather to come when people want to get out and barbecue. We do not have sufficient space for families in this borough to practice that. How would you resolve an issue such as that were you elected borough president? Vanessa, you go.
Annalise, do you want me to start, or do you want the Assemblywoman?
Vanessa.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Joyce, for your question, and thank you for everything you've done in the community, and certainly on behalf of Friends of Four Parks Alliance, namely your backyard of Joyce Kilmer Park. And I know when you speak of these issues, it's really about Joyce Kilmer and Mullally Park, North and South, because these parks, while they're small in acreage, they have a lot of usage. And during the pandemic, families were using them for a multitude of events and graduations and birthdays and celebrations. I saw so much going on. And I realized it's because families were holed up in their apartments for months trying to be safe during a pandemic. So number one, the answer to that is looking at city-owned parcels of land and building out brand new parks, like what we're doing with Grant Park. We are closing, we've demapped Grant Avenue between 169 and 170. We're going to combine Grant Park today, Morris, 170, 169, and Grant, and that's going to be a whole big park, potentially an amphitheater, a dog run. We're going to preserve the Dred Scott Bird Sanctuary, and we'll have space for the students at CS 88 on Sheridan Avenue who have no gymnasium and no outdoor space right now. So number one, that's a good way to start to look at underutilized city-owned land that's ripe for development in terms of building out brand new parks. We're getting, as I mentioned, Bridge Playground is brand new. We did a park alienation thanks to Assemblywoman Joyner and Senator Serrano. And then we're also getting a brand new Corporal Fisher. And these sites were underutilized, owned by the city, no development, and we've provided the funding to move that forward. In addition, I think we should have a conversation now with the Department of Ed and the Parks Department, because a lot of playgrounds on DOE sites are only open and available for the students of that school during school hours. But in communities like ours, where you have a high rate of multi-family dwelling buildings, a lot of families and children living literally sometimes on top of each other, and not a lot of open outdoor space, not every family is willing to travel to Orchard Beach or, you know, parts of the East and Pelham Bay. They just can't get there. So they have to look at opportunities in their own neighborhoods. But we should have a conversation with the Department of Ed. We have a new chancellor now, and look at opportunities where we can open up those playgrounds during the non-school hours for local community residents. I mean, there's a lot of overlap. The same students we're talking about that go to those schools also live in the communities too. And so that could be an opportunity, because we don't often build brand new parks as we should. But I do think the administration has to look at a mechanism that looks at growth of population, you know, per 100,000 residents as we do. As we build housing, there should be schools and parks and playgrounds that go hand in hand with that, so we can deal with the density in parts of our borough. We can look at the underutilized city-owned land, and we can really look at opportunities to build out brand new parks, but also look at some of our existing playgrounds right now that are not utilized by the local community, and open up that access for greater opportunities for local families and children.
I do want to agree on the point that Councilmember Gibson said about utilizing the parks and making sure that they're open for the rest of the community. But a part of that is going back to making sure we have the funding and maintenance available and staff available. Every region of parks is represented under the control and management of a manager. They have a number of staff members. And like in my areas, Loretto Park closed one day at 3 p.m. and everybody was up in arms. Why is the park closed at 3 p.m.? And the answer was because they didn't have the staff to get there in time at sundown to close the park, and thus they had to close it earlier. If we had staff that can address their number of parks in their region to make sure that we're closing it at correct times, at sundown, at dusk, 9 p.m., whichever it is, but to make sure that the public has access to the park space for the hours it's supposed to be open. As far as barbecuing, Pelham Parkway, Mosholu Parkway, Pelham Bay Park, this is an issue that has been going on for a number of years, and we've increased signage. We've, increased advocacy to teach our neighbors that barbecuing in unsafe and undesignated places in our parks is dangerous for our trees. The smoke, the soot, the coal, that's not good for our parks. It's not good for the ground. It's not good for our plants. So educating that and a broader spectrum whether we got to tell it to our kids in school so they could tell their parents to be aware, extending outreach through our community boards and the community groups so they can help educate us, but also figuring out where we can expand designated areas. Right now, only Pelham Bay Park and Van Cortlandt Park have designated barbecue areas, but we see, and we talk about it right here, that our parks are basically our backyards. This is our space for recreation, and you can't stop human nature that wants to be out there spending the day with their family and enjoying it, but you have to be responsible when you enjoy it. So instead of always sending an NYPD officer, we need to have our park officers available, monitoring, going through our parks to kindly educate our people that, you can't barbecue here. There's designated areas there. And like I said, the designated areas are still very far away. Bronx River Park right here in Allerton and Bronx Park East is a very popular spot where people go and barbecue, and there's no designated barbecue area. So giving the attention to these areas and assessing if it's possible to create clear designated barbecue spots is something that I think should be explored, but also making sure that it's not hurting the green nature around it.
Thank you very much. Our common theme here is the cutting of staff. We understand that park staffing is going to be cut once again this year. And I know that there's some movement in the city council to restore some funding, but will either of you support raising the staff levels to 5,000? Because this really, well, I don't have to tell you that this is a huge borough, lots of park space, and asking PEP officers to go around and monitor. We don't have PEP officers. There's so few of them in this borough. So would you support raising the staff levels to 5,000? That's
absolutely. Yep, I got you, Joyce. Absolutely. And let me say, last year's adopted budget, there was an $84 million cut to the Parks Department. So in the council, we are advocating, we are optimistic about this federal money, the stimulus plan, $1.9 trillion, the infusion of billions of dollars to the state's budget to deal with their deficit as well as the city. I am going into this budget process attempting to prioritize all of the cuts that we imposed last year. Before we look at enhancements, we have to look at restoration of services. The 100 parks workers, that 10 million, that's going to stay. We have to look at the PEP officers. We cut parks rangers last year, which is not acceptable. But generally speaking, there is an inequity in the system, and Commissioner Rodriguez Rosa and her team at the borough do the very best they can. But the budget that goes to the city's parks department and actually is given to the boroughs itself does not reflect the green space that the borough has. So you would think having Pelham Park and Pelham Bay Park and all of these large parks that it would give us more support. It does not. So that's number one. We have to deal with that fundamental disparity and address that at the budget level. I am all for adding more, 5,000, if that's the number. Absolutely, I aim high because we need it all. We expect parks to be heavily used this year again. And I definitely want to look at some of our seasonal workers. Again, SYEP, I want to get opportunities for our young people. I want to continue to add to the staff. But I also want to have ambassadors. During last summer, during the pandemic, we worked with anti-gun violence organizations, and a part of the SYEP program was related to youth ambassadors going into parks, reminding park goers of picking up behind themselves, using the trash receptacles, the big bellies and others in our parks, as well as wearing face masks. I think that will continue this summer. So I am a fan of encouraging young people as a way to build responsibility, to get a job. Let's use them. They can also supplement the work that the Parks Department is doing too. So I think we have to be creative, and yes, relying on the Parks Department and its staff is important, but I also think we have to look at other outlets as well. We also need more money, Joyce, and many of you will agree, for our community groups. I want to be able to give more funding to many of the groups on the ground, like the Bronx is Blooming, I Love the Bronx, New York Restoration Project, Sustainable South Bronx. These are all groups I've funded from my discretionary, but I don't have enough money. I need more money. So I'm hoping that this year, with the infusion of federal dollars, we can give more money to Friends of Four Parks Alliance and others, so you all can do more cleanups, you can do more education for park goers, and we can develop more partnerships with our local schools, because we want to get young people interested in maintaining their parks right in their neighborhood. So I'm all for it, yes, as an answer to your question, and I will do what I can this budget year.
Thank you very much. Assemblywoman.
Absolutely. As I've said in some of my past answers, recent answers here, we need the help, we need the maintenance, we need park staff on the grounds to help address the issues that we all explain now. And the park budget, as far as I've been involved in the last decade in government, has continuously been decreasing. So the $84 million cut was a huge hit to an already hurting issue that has not been, I think, strongly addressed by our administration and city council members. So with the federal dollars, with the state that is fighting, I am in the state right now fighting to make sure we are increasing revenue to give, to the city, to our state parks department, to make sure we're putting in the proper resources and support needed to help keep our parks maintained.
This is really for both of you. The Parks Department maintains over 28,000 acres here in the Bronx. Its budget is less than 5% of the city's budget. We have been advocating for years to at least bring it up to 1%. How would you work toward getting that essential service to be given the necessary funding? And how do we switch that dynamic? It's so out of whack.
I agree with you, Joyce, and it has been like that for some time. We've been able to get some success in past budgets. We've had a lot of park advocates and different organizations come and testify at City Hall and really advocate to the mayor to put the budget in the preliminary, but if not, during the budget process, to make sure it could be in the executive budget that comes out every April. But we have to continue to do more of that. I think it's important to raise our voices, and as borough president, we'll make sure that that is a top priority. I think a budget is always reflective of one's values. And if you look at the parks budget being less than 10% of the overall $95 billion city's budget, that's a drop in the bucket, and it speaks volumes to our priority on open space and our parks. And I think that has to change. The only way that changes is with strong advocacy with leaders and residents and so many others that are stepping up, that are signing petitions, getting in our faces as council members, talking to the mayor, and and really supporting the work of the Parks Department. They are unrecognized most times, and they're not, showing the appreciation that they really deserve all year round, not just during the summer and spring season, but the work they do all year round. Maintenance and operations is far less than it should be. We have to recognize the importance as we build out new parks. We have to make sure that the park budget for maintenance and operation should go with that particular park. What we could offer as a possibility is some sort of a formula that looks at the size of that park and the acreage, and develop some sort of a mechanism by which you would get a certain amount of staff per size of the park. That could be a way to start, because I'm really not sure how the Parks Department does it today. It seems very general with no specificity on sizable parks versus smaller parks. And so I want to hear those ideas, and as borough president will certainly be a champion during the budget process. I'll go and testify myself to make sure that OMB, the Parks Department, as well as the administration hears us on future budgets.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate both of your input, and I realize that these are also questions that we will present to our mayoral candidates also.
Thank you, Joyce. I think we have to go to the Q&A session. I think we have to go to the Q&A questions. Thank you so much, Joy, for helping us with this part. And I want to thank you, candidates, for this Q&A questions part. And now we have Dr. Fanusi that will help us with the Q&A questions from the public. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. And candidates, I'll be looking at our questions from our audience, and they've been fantastic. I want to thank you for your answers to questions for the panelists. So I will also ask you to keep your answers to about 1 minute each so I can ask as many questions as we can. So the first question has to do with the economic development and development in affordable housing that's going on around the Bronx. As borough president, you are a leader and promoter of economic development for our borough. But residents note that development also often squeezes out parklands, or it takes place without parkland or green space. Can you tell us, as a candidate, what kinds of development policies and advocacy you will lead that will enable a developing borough to get its fair share of green space? Either candidate, take it.
I'll take this one. With every development that we have, we need to make sure it's coming with proper services and amenities for the community. So I've said before in various forums, if we're going to bring in affordable housing, we need to make sure that the community around it can support it with a school to make sure that our children have an uncrowded school to attend and proper food resources. But as we're speaking now, green space is very important for the need of recreation and sanctuary and, again, education on nature. So when these agreements come, I absolutely will make it a demand. We need to see the incorporation of green spaces, of protecting green spaces, and making sure that the community that is coming there and moving to there has that option, but also making sure that the infrastructure is built with resiliency in mind, because as we talk about, being healthy, not 62, and our park space being a source of recreation and exercise, and our buildings and our infrastructure can help us come out of this not 62, be healthy for us. We need to make sure that our buildings are prepared for weathering, for the climate change to come. Oh, I see my time up.
Well, thank you very much. Ms. Gibson, how will you deal with green space and parks needs with development?
Thank you. Great question. The only way you can achieve that is by looking at some of the HPD incentives and tax credit programs that drive development, specifically the construction of housing. The only experience I've seen in the council where you're able to get brand new parks and amenities like new schools is through a neighborhood rezoning. When you upzone a community, when you move from an R7 and R8, you look at, M1 districts and C8, C9, all these different terms. But outside of that, if you're looking at individual housing projects under some of the existing term sheets, which can be changed, you as a developer have to provide outdoor space, if it's terrace, potentially opportunities for community space for the residents of that particular building, right? Not the neighborhood. And so if we're going to have a conversation about individual housing projects that have to provide opportunities for the neighborhood, then we have to stimulate that, whether it's through the RFP process, through the tax credit incentive and the financing. We have to drive this and stimulate it with incentives that encourage developers to look beyond their building and look at the neighborhood. So I would propose that as borough president.
Thank you. Here's another big picture question. It has to do with the structural changes needed to the New York City budget to enable parks to get its own funding and meet these demands for staffing that you've heard about. What has been your thinking about what's wrong with the current budget structure of the Parks Department, and what measures do you think you can take as borough president to change that?
I think the issues with the budget structure is that it's too broad. And we've spoken about our specific parks here, Joyce Kilmer, Moshalou, Pelham Parkway, Pelham Bay, and there's different but same activity that happens here. We need to audit and analyze what is the maintenance efforts that have been happening in our specific parks and add that to a proposal to show the detailed amount of funding that would be needed to help maintain these. That report will be, at least for me, brought to the testifying table to show that this is what our parks need. This is what our community needs right now to help have a safe and clean park, and we're demanding it in the budget.
Ms. Gibson, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree. I think, again, a budget is a reflection of your values and your priorities. And if we are not investing heavily in parks and open spaces, then that simply means we have to change. I would work as borough president with all of our community boards, all of our parks chairs at every CB, and identify what some of our suggestions could be. I am not in the business to wait for the next administration to come up with a new formula that's not as broad and that is more definitive and detailed, but I am ready and willing to give suggestions, right? If we have ideas as advocates and leaders, this is our borough, our community, let's come up with suggestions. Now, if it doesn't come from the community board level, then let's include our park advocates and our organizations and stakeholders. You don't have to be a part of the community board to have a role in this, but let's look at all stakeholders coming up with ideas that we formulate and put into a plan on how we change the formula so that it recognizes a borough like the Bronx and all the greenery we have, and making sure that the percentage that we get from the city parks department is reflective of what we need in the borough.
Great. I think I can take two more questions. So here's a question. It's everyone knows about the hellishly long procurement policy for building a park. It's been much discussion at former speak ups. Have you thought about your changes or what you would do to shorten the time between the proposal for a new park or playground and actually shovels in the ground and opening to the people?
Well, it's really important to plan because you fail to plan, it's a plan to fail. So we need to really set that schedule strict and straightforward of what we want to accomplish in the days between that procurement plan, making sure that we're reaching out and confirming participating community members and stakeholders to be a part of it as it's happening now, and don't let anything slip through the cracks and go against the timeline.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Gibson?
As a city council, I chair the subcommittee on capital, and during that time, we have tried to really streamline the design process. So if you think about a construction of a brand new park, you start with design. That usually takes 9 months to a year, and then you put that together. Then you go to the actual bidding process where you entertain bidders that will come in. Then you go to procurement. Then you move forward for construction. That process in itself is almost 2.5 years. Not acceptable. So one thing we have to look at is standardizing the design process, expediting it. We have to look at better recruitment of vendors, because we are sometimes subjected to the same handful of developers that build parks in New York City. That's unacceptable. We have to look at better recruitment of minority and women-owned businesses, MWBE, and we have to find better ways as an administration to streamline this process. Beyond frustrating that as council members, sometimes we get awards that are much higher than the allocation, and we have to go back and put money into underfunded projects. So as borough president, I will work with the administration to streamline the design process, look at the bidding process, look at the better recruitment in the industry of those that build parks as well as comfort stations, so that the Parks Department can operate much more efficiently, and we can timeline these projects to something that's more meaningful and something that's more realistic.
Fantastic. Our last question, everybody. This is a new one, a good one, because we kind of zoom out and think about what COVID has taught us about our love of parks. And a question from our attendees today has to do with the kinds of programs and kind of collateral benefits that people get from using parks, especially for those from vulnerable communities facing health. What are your special programs that you think the parks can be good homes for and magnets for, that address the large inequities that people face in terms of health outcomes in our borough right now? What kind of project or special programs do you want to promote in these hopefully well-staffed parks that will be under your administration? Ms. Hernandez.
I would love to see more activities hosted in the park by Parks Department. You know, we've had community groups that have done them on their own, Zumba in the park, yoga in the park, but, you know, utilizing the programming that comes out of the Van Cortlandt Nature Center, nature tours, you know, these things can be promoted much better than they have been, to bring people into their parks right in their backyards, you know, down the street, or going to Van Cortlandt Park, you know, to make a day of it. So having these set, you know, plans and schedules to encourage a day in the park, I think is something that will certainly get people learning more, because you're going to have a guide, you're going to have the information around you being told to you, but also just creating safe and fun activity to spend time on the weekends, getting you active for our seniors, for our children. We can have yoga for all ages, but things like this, I think, certainly shows that the city is wanting your participation, is trying to provide you more recreational activity that is safe, that is easy to do, and that is accessible.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ms. Gibson.
I love this question. I love activities in the park. I am so active and have been pre-pandemic. So a lot of the events, as Assemblywoman Hernandez mentioned, yes, we should have Zumba, we should have fitness classes, we should have health and wellness events. We should really do everything to stimulate our residents, whether they're older, children, families. We have to get people moving. We have to encourage them to use our parks for so many activities, and we can fund these projects in the city, not just the city council, but as borough president. I recognize there is a strong correlation between our parks events and reducing high rates of asthma and really reducing a lot of the health disparities that we face. So in addition to Zumba, fitness classes, yoga, I've hosted silent disco, I have family days, I have barbecues, I have movie nights, all of these great events that we did pre-pandemic. And I look forward to having them again, because we also want our children to experience the nature and the beauty of our open spaces. So I'm a big fan of Double Dutch. I love Double Dutch, and like events like that, they're just so great to intergenerational programs. So I would do that as Bronx Borough President, and certainly will continue a lot of the work I've done.
Excellent. Thank you for your answers, and public, thank you for your questions. That closes out our Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fanucci. I know that we have our Bronx Parks Commissioner, Ms. Iris Rodriguez. I understand Ms. Iris Rodriguez wants to talk to us. Am I right? I'm my technical assistance. Do we have Ms. Iris Rodriguez?
I'm going to work on that right now.
Thank you so much.
She's promoted to panelist.
Okay, so Ms. Iris Rodriguez is our Bronx Parks Commissioner. Please, Ms. Iris, introduce yourself.
You're on mute.
Okay, hello.
Oh, you're still muted.
Just muted you.
Ms. Rodriguez, okay, thank you, Ms. Rodriguez.
Okay. Hello, and can you hear me? Okay, okay, terrific. Wonderful. This is absolutely amazing. Robert, Karen, and Nilka, I can't tell you, I mean, if I go through the litany of people that I know here, Joyce and everyone else, and Dart, I can't, I would not cease. So I have to say that I am honored and I'm privileged to be a part of this forum for the many, many years that I have been a part of it. I can't thank you enough. I happen to say that in 2020, as you know, we went through this whole pandemic and everything like that, and we were oversubscribed. So many of you here that are in this forum, and many of our elected officials came out, and I have to say that I think I'm the borough that is blessed the most. I think I have amazing elected officials that not only did they come out to say hi to the community organizations that volunteered, but they actually rolled up their sleeves, picked up a shovel, picked up debris from our parks. It was amazing. The borough president himself had Meaningful Mondays, and everyone came out with either fraternity organizations or community organizations, and they were out there helping us in the parks department. I will say that this year we may be faced again with many overuse, oversubscription of our parks, but you know what? Our parks are the sanctuary for our communities, and they are so necessary. So we want to make sure that also the community understands this is their parks, but we need you to take care of them. So in April, we're going to be launching again an anti-litter campaign. We're going to be creating corrals in several parks throughout the borough. This administration, we have a plan to be able to get more people involved in all the things that we do. I could stay talking here for hours for each and every one of you that have been such a part. They have taught me so much. I know the Bronx Council of Environmental Quality has taught me so much, and I've learned so much from them. Nilka, everyone that has been part of it. So I want to say thank you. I want to thank our elected officials for always being a part of everything that we do in the borough, and the many organizations that are out there. So as your borough commissioner for parks, that I manage 7,000 acres of parkland, I say thank you, bless you, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Iris Rodriguez Rosa. I didn't know you have two last names like me. Thank you so much. I want to thank you so much to our Assemblywoman, Natalia Hernandez, and our Councilwoman, Vanessa Gibson. You both did a wonderful job in this forum, and we wish you good luck on this endeavor. So thank you so much. It has been wonderful to have both you here. And I understand we have an artist with us. His name is, or I'm not sure, no one talked to me about this, but the name is Parker. And Parker will give us will talk to us or give us something for us to go away with. Parker? Oh yeah, he's a musician. He's a musician. Parker, thank you so much for being here, and please take it.
Yes, I wanted to join the candidates forum. I want to be the candidate for the minstrel. And this is a song I composed for the Speak Up called Speak Up for Your Park. You gotta speak up for your park. That's what you've gotta do. If you neglect and don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark, if you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. Now I came up in the boogie down Bronx, they call it Kingsbridge Heights. By the age of 3, Mom was showing me all 4 parks delights. My focus went no further than the leaves beneath my shoes. All different sizes, shapes, and rainbow colors and hues. The swings, and in the summertime, the sprinkler was on, no doubt. And I really dug not hockey when the parky would break it out. And added up to what became an inspiration spark. But I was too young to have a tongue to speak up for my park. You gotta speak up for your park. That's what you gotta do. If you neglect, then don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark, if you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. When I got a little bit older, to the pigeon park I went. I kissed a few girls behind the trees, but always with their consent. It wasn't the only attraction, and I got into sports. I wore out plenty Chuck Taylors, running up and down the basketball courts. I had to personalize them, orange shoelaces for me. And you would call a foul on yourself out of basic courtesy. We all could play the whole darn day, only quitting when it got dark. And I was starting to grasp the need to speak up for my park. You gotta speak up for your park. That's what you gotta do. If you neglect, don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark, if you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. Acorns for squirrels and squirrels for hawks. That's the way the food web rolls. And you better believe that we're a part of it, along with the mice and the moles. So be thankful that mosquitoes are a dragonfly's favorite meal. They scarf them in the water and in the air. It's their predatory deal. Let's put in some helpful plants along the garden trail. Milkweed for the monarchs, fennel for the swallowtail. To make a place for them to grow in our urban Noah's Ark. So they will be included when we speak up for the park. You gotta speak up for your park. That's what you gotta do. If you neglect, then don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark, if you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. If I may be so bold, I'm not too old to spit a decent flow. Just think Bronx River or Tibbetts Brook, and you'll be in the know. You can bet your boots if we dig the roots. There's people to enlist. All the Bronx celebrities now, tell me if there's any I missed. Sonia Sotomayor sits on the highest bench. Comedian Mr. Robert Klein is just about the ultimate mensch. And gangsters can change behavior. Fat Joe's no longer so fat. Jenny from the block who rides a six can really go to bat. Kemba Walker, Cardi B, commentary Chaz. Let's get them to throw in with us some celebrity razzmatazz. You gotta speak up for your park. That's what you gotta do. If you neglect, then don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark, if you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. You gotta speak up for your park. That's what you gotta do. If you neglect, then don't expect your park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark, if you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. Speak up for your park. Speak up.
Wow, what a great song, Parker. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Parker.
Fantastic.
That's a great song, Parker. I understand that we have time for closing remarks from our candidates. So since we started with Natalia, maybe, I don't know if you want to toss it up or however you guys want to, I will call, who want to start, Miss Assemblywoman or Miss Councilwoman?
I don't mind.
You don't mind. Thank you so much. You have some closing remarks?
Yes. Thank you so much to everybody in this room listening in on Facebook and the participants here and the organizers of this very important conversation. As we've been saying here today many times, our parks are so important to the structure of our communities, to the structure of our lives, to our peace of minds, to the beauty and health of our city. So it's really important that as the next borough president, that the next administration, the next mayor, anybody that has a piece of the power to make sure that we are getting the support that we needed, puts our parks in the forefront. And we need to continue to fight for further education, to support our community groups, to support the needs that come out every single day from advocacy from members of our community, and to really make sure that we're doing all that we can to help our green space. This is the only planet we got left. This is right now the parks that we have to live with, and we need to preserve them as best as possible. So thank you so much. I'm Natalia Hernandez. I look forward to continue talking with everyone here. I did put my website in the chat. Please follow along. Please ask the questions. Please let me know what you want to see in your borough. This is yours, and we will make sure that it works for all Bronxites, that all Bronxites are heard, all Bronxites are seen, and we are all served. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Natalia. Please, Vanessa, your closing remarks.
Thank you so much again, Annalise. You did a great job moderating today. God bless you. And really to everyone, to our borough commissioner, to Karen, to Joyce, Chauncey, Dart, Nilka, BCEQ, to Bronx Parks, to all of our advocacy groups that we've worked with over the years. We appreciate you for all that you've done, for all that you stand for, and being champions on behalf of not just our parks and open spaces, but being champions on behalf of our people. We have an exciting opportunity in the next few months in June to elect the next leader of this great borough, a leader who is a champion for parks, but also a champion for all of the other important components of our lives that we fundamentally believe in. Access to affordable housing, quality schools, accessible healthcare, open parks and spaces, dedicated bus lanes and dedicated bike lanes, keeping pedestrians and cyclists safe, investing in so much of our waterfront, like the Harlem River, looking at our step streets, creating opportunities for health and wellness and stability and investment in our beautiful, beloved borough. We can have all of that as we move forward as a borough. We realize that COVID-19, this global pandemic that has taken the lives of 500,000 Americans, thousands of Bronxites right here in the Bronx, the highest death rate to COVID. It is a setback, but I am reminded that a setback is preparation for a comeback. We have an opportunity to come back more vibrant, stronger, and healthier than ever before. The only way we do that is by exercising our voices, our votes at the ballot, and making sure that we elect another leader to take on the great work that Ruben Diaz Jr. has done and carry on a lot of legacy projects, like the renovation of Orchard Beach, like the Bronx Children's Museum that will finally open. We can have all of these things. We need a champion, someone who understands the soaring unemployment, the food insecurity that we've been facing, and the need to really invest in our open parks and our spaces. And I am a candidate that is ready, willing, and able to do the work. I don't need on-the-job training. I have a work record and a track record of great things we've done over the years. And I know it has not been easy, but none of you have ever given up on the possibilities. And for that, we are grateful. So we have to keep pushing on. We have to keep pressing on because there is so much optimism. And so many of our residents don't see the work we're doing. They have lost hope. We have to give them back that hope so that they understand all the potential we have here in the Bronx. I'm excited at what lies ahead because I realize that all of us are in this together. United we stand and divided we fall. We share more in common than we do that divides us. Whether it's our beautiful Roberto Clemente State Park, Pelham Bay Park, Van Cortlandt Park, Pelham Parkway, High Bridge, all of the parks we represent from Claremont, Joyce Kilmer.
We apologize, council member, but we need to go to the next forum. We appreciate your time here, council member, Councilwoman Vanessa Gibson, and we appreciate the time with our Assemblywoman, Natalia Hernandez. Thank you so much. And now we are going to the next forum. And I understand we have 2 candidates for this forum, but before we start candidates, we have interpretation to Spanish, and I'm gonna allow the interpreters to talk to us. Tenemos interpretación al español. Por favor, traductores. Where are my translators? Okay. Oops. Okay, so I think at this point, we're showing our parks platform. The platform is not moving, and someone is showing we should be showing something else, I believe. Could we, my technical assistants, could we show, please? Okay, we have it there. For our candidates, thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. We are showing right now our platform. We want to start in a second. And if my translators want to speak and talk about the instruction for translations, we will be listening from them. If not, I will start with the forum.
So our translators won't be able to exit the translation mode. So
Okay.
if we are translating into Spanish. So I don't know, Annalise, if you could direct folks to the interpretation button at the bottom of the Zoom screen, or possibly in the More section. If you could do that in Espanol, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. I will. Mientras enseñamos la plataforma de parques de BCEQ, queremos decirle que tenemos traducción al español y usted puede encontrar la traducción en el español en el enlace que le ponemos en Facebook o al final de la pantalla. Por favor, déjenos saber y acuérdese que si usted tiene preguntas para los candidatos, póngalo en la sección de Q&A. Ok, la interpretación, como pueden ver, la interpretación, pueden accesar a la interpretación donde ven la manita. Ok, so while we see the the Parks platform, I just want to say thank you so much, candidates, for being here with us. My name is Ana Liz Figueroa Garcia, and I have been a Bronx resident living in the Highbridge neighborhood for 15 years. While the Bronx is known as the greenest borough and has the largest percentage of park acreage of any borough in New York City, many Bronx residents, someone needs to mute, please. Bronx residents do not have access to parks nearby, or the nearby parks is inaccessible. As part of our Bronx Park Speak Out, our vision is to provide all Bronxonites access to the parks and develop network of safe connections between existing parks. We are hosting this candidates forum to bring attention to equitable funding for parks in the Bronx. Someone needs to mute, please. If you have, thank you so much. Now I'm going to go over quickly over the guidelines for the forum. Candidates, please be aware that this is a webinar and your mic will be open, so you will be able to mute and unmute yourself. Please be mindful of your time and keep to any other rules we have established. We're gonna mute you, and I will apologize for that, but we want to keep this going. The program is a 5 minutes introduction for each. When I call you, please introduce yourself and talk about parks issue. The time manager will use a green card and at 1 minute, yellow card or screen at 30 seconds, and red at 10 seconds, reminding when the colors go off the screen, we may mute you. The second part of the program will be a Q&A from the panel. If time allowed, from the public attending our Facebook streaming, we're gonna ask questions. You will have a minute to answer. The timer will use a green screen at 30 seconds and red screen at 10 seconds, reminding. Time is really tight, so please go. If you go over the time, we reserve the right to mute you. We don't want to do that. For our participants in Facebook, and please remember, we want you to ask questions. Please take this time to put your full name, email, and know if you are part of a community group. Joseph Sanchez will be moderating our chat. Chat is for networking, our Zoom chat or the Q&A questions. Chat is for networking. Please be respectful and do not engage in attacks or any other things like that. And please ask questions about parks. Participants that post anything offensive may be removed from the event at discretion of the chat moderator. Now we will go to our candidates. Since you're here for our candidates, I want to introduce, and I'm sorry, I think I'm trying to do my best in pronouncing names, but English is not my first language. We're gonna go to Catherine Garcia. Please, Ms. Garcia, introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Catherine Garcia. I'm running for New York City Mayor. I apologize that I am out, but I was at a rally to support Asian Americans who have been the subject of so many hate crimes. But I'm a born and bred Brooklynite. I hope the Bronx will forgive me. I was educated in our public schools, who grew up with my 4 brothers and sisters, and we were able to live a middle-class life that was affordable to 2 parents who were civil servants. That is what I want to see for all New Yorkers. But I also want to make sure that we are opening up all of our parks and creating greenways. Not only does this help with climate change, but this also helps with our public health. It keeps our lungs cleaner. We know that air quality is changed when we are in green space. We know our physical health is changed when we are in green spaces. We know that our mental health is changed when we are in green spaces. And that is why I'm running for mayor. because I want to see all of our families thrive in New York City. And I know the Bronx has some of the most beautiful parks, some of the most interesting parks, from Borough to Van Cortlandt, but we need those interconnections between them so that everyone has access to those wonderful spaces. And during the pandemic, it became clear that parks were infrastructure, that they were critical to everything that we could do because it was the only place that we could go during the pandemic. And so you may not have known me before this Zoom, but you knew my work. I had been responsible for delivering clean water and making sure that our harbor and sewers were clean. I was responsible for picking up garbage, and I was responsible for plowing snow. And during COVID, I was responsible for delivering 130 million meals, half of which went to the Bronx, because we couldn't let any New Yorker go hungry. We need to open up our economy by keeping fundamental city services working. So one of my first jobs will be to put back that money so harshly cut from the parks budget, the $80 million, because we can't have parks that are dirty and that are unusable. That just doesn't work. And I'm running because I'm ready to lead you to a better tomorrow in the greatest city in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Catherine Garcia. And also we have Eddie Colin. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, so my name is Eddie Cullen, and I am actually born and bred from the Bronx. It's great to see you, Catherine. It's great to see everyone else here on the forum. I was born on 231st and Kingsbridge Avenue in the Bronx and spent a lot of my time in childhood in Van Cortlandt Park. So I'm very excited to be here and talk to you about my background and who I am. I was born to a pretty large family, my grandfather and his 7 brothers, and actually there were 19 of them. All 8 of them fought in World War II and they all survived. And they all grew up on 231st and Kingsbridge, right next to Van Cortlandt. So we've been around for about 200 years near the Van Cortlandt area. And my whole family has been around here for a really, really, really long time. I went to Fordham University. I graduated with a degree in economics, philosophy, and Latin. I did the Jesuit Volunteer Corps where I graduated, where I spent a year volunteering with the homeless, teaching high school, and lived on $85 a month. And for the last 10 years, I've been in the technology entrepreneurship world. And I've also been working as an educator. So currently, I'm actually a visiting scholar at Purdue University. So I lead a consortium of 250 mechanical engineers within climate engineering, environmental engineering, and do a lot of day-to-day work actually on the United States-Mexico border. So we're building a 1,989-mile energy corridor where we're trying to reimagine work for immigration and also reimagine work for the American workforce. So I was shocked into action last summer. I just saw too many things that were happening to my community. And my father, actually, unfortunately, 2 years ago, passed away on Christmas on 239th and Blackstone Avenue here in the Bronx. So I think he would have told me to step up and do something about what was going on. So I decided to run for mayor, and I decided to really use my technology entrepreneurship and skills to work towards creating a better future. So my experience can help us, I think, individualize our projects and leading citywide resilience. And I think we can do that through using different private properties with waterfront tools. I think we can use different financing mechanisms, creative ways to build, create, and generate revenue through resiliency, and then also using all different sorts of people from all walks of life, from the academic area and then also from the public sector. So I'm a little bit different. I'm not a politician. I'm actually an entrepreneur and a teacher. And I have about 10 years of skill sets within entrepreneurship, and then being able to leverage my entrepreneurial abilities to create projects around climate, energy, and engineering. So I'm super excited to be here and kind of dive into a lot of things that I care about, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think equity is a really important facet to what's going on in our city. I actually just came from a Black Lives Matter special screening for a film called The American Street Mural in Harlem. So I'm super excited about what I can do and do for my community. I mean, you guys probably even walk down David Michael Ruddle Street almost every day on 234th Street. That's actually someone from my family who was married to my sister, and unfortunately passed away in 9/11. So I actually have a lot of roots and family around Van Cortlandt. I know a lot about the history dating back all the way to Franklin Edson with the water aqueducts in Van Cortlandt, and just I'm so excited to be here and just kind of talk about my background and who I am from the Kingsbridge community and how I can use that to help innovate within Bronx parks in a creative way. So thank you all. Super excited to field questions and kind of dive into this.
Thank you so much, Eddie Cullen. And before we continue with the Q&A questions from our panelists, I understand that we are on Facebook Live and BronxNet will be, and this being recorded right now. So I understand that it will be transmitted in BronxNet and also in our BCEQ website. So we're gonna start with the panelist questions. Please remember your timing. I have the pleasure to introduce Dart Westfall. He's going to begin our Q&A questions. Dart, please.
Thank you very much. The first question concerns the practice of requiring public-private partnerships who are taking the lead on our biggest parks and our community gardens to indemnify, insure, and hold harmless the city of New York for activities in the park. As mayor, how would you handle this? We'll stay in the same order for these first two questions. Ms. Garcia.
We cannot have bureaucracy block us from having good results. So I would end this practice because I know how important friends groups are, conservancies are, to making sure that we have healthy, vibrant parks, and also that we do things in them, that they're activated, that we have cultural events, that we have recreational events. So I would end that practice.
Thank you. Mr. Cullen.
So I would end that practice, and then I would also work with the community, I think, to come up with different models of public-private partnerships. So for instance, Dart, if the community says they want to come up with some sort of water resiliency project or recreational event, I think it should be up to the individuals and the community organizations running those parks to come up with the model for those public-private partnerships. I think the current model is wrong, but I think we can find ways to collaborate and leverage public-private partnerships in a sustainable way.
Thank you.
Dart, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I got some news that Ms. Garcia have to leave at 2:15. If it's okay with Eddie, we want to separate both candidates and ask the question first to Catherine Garcia. And thank you, Eddie, for being so flexible with us and with Ms. Garcia. So Dart, please go ahead with the questions.
The second question is, as mayor, can you commit to not alienating parkland for non-park purposes?
Yes. So with the caveat that, having the Croton treatment plant there actually benefited Bronx parks to the tune of $200 million. But no, I love parks and I want to see them thrive in the Bronx. I know how important. I want to expand those greenways. I want to make those connections. And I want to make sure we're giving access to the Bronx River and to the Harlem River and to the Westchester Creek.
Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to the next panelist, Joyce Hoagie, to ask the questions of Ms. Garcia, and then I will come back with that question number 2 for our other candidate. Joyce?
Ms. Garcia, thank you, Dart. Thank you so much for attending our forum here. I know you're on a tight schedule, and usually we hold this event at Lehman College. This year, we don't have to be concerned about the weather, but you were out in it. Sorry about that. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the parks budget. Our Parks Department maintains over 28,000 acres, and every year the budget gets slashed. The budget is less than 5% of the city's expense budget. How could you affect a change in that for more equitable distribution?
The parks budget has to be protected. We have to view it as being a required service, just like so many other services in the city of New York. It has been absolutely critical during the pandemic. I think it showed its true colors about how much it was needed. And so I would absolutely protect the parks budget and actually look to do a baseline budget of what does it really need to maintain all these spaces to ensure that they are getting the resources. And so we aren't have parks failing. It actually costs you more money if you allow the park to fail and you got to fix it. So better to keep it in good shape.
Thank you very much. Would you support restoring the park staff to 5,000? it has been cut drastically.
Yes, I do support having park staff, and I know that they have taken, I know that they took a severe cut this year, and that needs to be restored.
Yeah, they eliminated, well, the budget was eliminated this year. My group, BCEQ, granted $5,000 to local parks groups just to start cleanups for this spring. Would you support doubling the seasonal hiring?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and you know, we really struggled with even, you know, getting lifeguards for Orchard Beach this year. And we needed that access during the height of the summer, and making sure we have seasonal employees so that they can make it so that we can enjoy these spaces.
Now, we understand that the park staffing is scheduled to be cut again this year. How can you affect that change?
For, you know, from my seat, I will be advocating for the parks budget. And when I'm mayor, we will restore it.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much.
Also, we have Dr. Sanusi. I don't think we're gonna go there. I think we have to go and ask questions. Go ahead, please. Who's talking? Who's interrupting them? Okay.
Sorry,
So,
I'm sorry.
Chelsea, I think we should go ahead with our candidate, Eddie Colin, and we should ask the panelists questions right now.
Just because Catherine needs to leave in 15 minutes, we
Okay,
do have a couple of questions. I mean, she needs to leave in
Chelsea,
10 minutes.
it's okay. I got you. I think as long as Eddie's okay with that, I think we're gonna go ahead with Dr. Fanusi. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Fanusi, who's gonna help us with a Q&A question from Facebook and the Q&A part. Go ahead, Dr. Fanusi.
Thank you. I'm with BCEQ, board member and president, so thank you. I had a question for Ms. Garcia. Mr. Cullen, you'll get this question, same question after Ms. Garcia leaves. The question is that the Bronx is becoming a development opportunity through both affordable housing subsidies and also through market. We've also seen that often that development will come at the expense of designated park or informally designated parkland, and sometimes will not provide sufficient green space for a borough starved of green space in areas outside the major parks, Pelham and Van Cortlandt Park. What will you do as mayor to make sure that development in the Bronx and green space in the Bronx go hand in hand?
We need to be doing development thoughtfully. You know, we don't want development to get ahead of where there are schools. We don't want development to get ahead of where there are parks. You know, this needs to be that we have all the elements of community when we are talking about development. And so I will use the powers of our zoning laws and eminent domain to ensure that there are green spaces in all of our neighborhoods, even as they change. We can actually envision a future where it is greener, where there is more opportunity for recreation in the Bronx, in these communities that are growing.
Ms. Garcia, we've talked about giving more money to the budget, okay, but several questioners from our attendees today have addressed the structural changes that need to be done, either through the administrative code or through the city charter even, about creating a dedicated revenue for the parks that's baselined, including things like capital procurement so that the procurement process goes quicker from plan to shovel and to opening. What big changes would you make to the way that parks are funded so that we don't have to go to the mat every year and try to get back to where we were from the last budget cut?
No, we need to create dedicated funding for the Parks Department. And on the capital budget side, it just shouldn't take so long. You know, there are real needs to cut the bureaucratic nonsense that happens, whether or not it's the alphabet soup of oversights, OMB, MOX, the controller's office, that makes it so it can be a year to get a shovel in the ground and then more years to get it done. I know how capital works. I've run $8 billion worth of capital projects, and the fundamental challenges about making it much more effective. So I know where the streamlining can occur. Some of it will require legislative changes, but a lot of it is within the purview of the mayor's office to make them. But we also need to think creatively about asking the state to create a way to do dedicated funding for the park in the same way that we do dedicated funding for our water supply.
Excellent. Could I just get a poke in on time, whether we can take another question?
Yes.
Okay. We've all learned from COVID that parks are sanctuaries and community restoration places. Obviously, from a local level, the parks volunteer groups have been amazingly creative, and I think they all deserve a hand here for what they've done to keep the parks running. We also know that going forward, as mayor, you need to create a value proposition for parks that goes beyond just turf, okay, and individual budgets. So as mayor, how will you make sure that other agencies, programs make use of parks, understand their common investment in parks, and how will you bring other city leaders and commissioners around to the importance of parks? How do you see them being leveraged for benefits for all?
And this is one of the current failures of the administration, because this is what City Hall's job is to make it so that all agencies are coordinated and working together for the benefit of our residents. And parks are at the center of people's well-being, people's health. And so I am absolutely able to pull together agencies across the spectrum to ensure that we are getting the most out of our parks, whether or not that's with the Department of Cultural Affairs, the Department of Environmental Protection, the Department of Transportation. All of them can end up touching the parks. And we need to ensure that we're working with the same mission to create more green space and more connectivity.
Okay, so I'm going to just close this out and just add a question for you, or an opportunity for your last statement. There's a lot of questions about your position on the Croton Filtration Monitoring Committee. Many people here, including me, are veterans of that. So I just want to ask you to stand by that, because we will ask this of Mr. Cullen in our next go round. Do you stand by the benefit created by the filtration plants in Bronx parks?
I do. I mean, it was $200+ million of work that all went into the parks, and there's a restoration. So the plant is there, but it is underground, and so the green space has been replaced, and it is protecting your drinking water in the Bronx so that you have clean water well into the future. And so that is a balance I think we need to make when we have to do big projects to ensure that New York City residents are getting the clean water they need, but that in the end of the day, the Bronx got to benefit by significant amount of capital money that went to many parks across the Bronx.
Okay, excellent. I'd like to call on a panelist and organizer for this event, Chauncey Young, to pose a question. Chauncey, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Good afternoon, Catherine. Really appreciate you taking the time to participate in this event today. Mayor de Blasio made a commitment during his administration to develop a greenway around the border of Manhattan, acknowledging the importance of connecting communities to the waterfront and also creating a safe and separate path for pedestrians and bicyclists and community members to get around the city. We want to know whether or not you would make a similar commitment to highlighting and connecting both the Harlem River Greenway and working to connect our greenways, the Bronx River Greenway, the Harlem River Greenway, and the Hudson River Greenway, where it comes up to the Bronx, to really help create safe, accessible spaces for Bronx and New York City community members that come to the Bronx. As you know, the Bronx has the highest county throughout the state in terms of obesity and a lot of negative health factors. So just really want to know if you would highlight and push up that need for a Harlem River Greenway and a Greenway network as development is happening throughout the Bronx.
I absolutely will, because I fundamentally believe that creating greenways across the city and rethinking our public realm and what we want this city to look like in 5 years and 10 years. And I envision a city that is greener, that is interconnected, that allows people to have opportunities for recreation, and that has better public health outcomes because they have cleaner air. You know, one of the reasons why I'm running for this job is it gives me great pleasure to see those fundamental changes. When I was at DEP, I banned number 6 heating oil, and you can tell based on the air quality that there's less SOx, NOx, and PM 2.5 in the asthma belt than there was before that ban went into effect. So I'm absolutely committed to greenways across the city, particularly in neighborhoods that are not close to our bigger jewel parks.
So, Ms. Garcia, thank you so much for taking these questions from the audience.
Thank you. And hopefully the sun comes out later and everyone can enjoy their park. It's a little drippy today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia, and thank you, Dr. Fanucci, for managing this bar. And thank you, Eddie Colin, for being so patient and for this impromptu moving of the agenda. We appreciate your time here. So we're gonna ask you the same questions. Please, start with the questions.
Yes, my second question was, as mayor, can you commit to not alienate parkland for non-park purposes?
Yes, we're not going to alienate parkland for non-park purposes. I'll get into some further detail on it and a few questions down the line, but we're not going to do that. You know, we're going to use our parks for our parks. I enjoy going to Van Cortlandt and watching cricket games. So, you know, I think we'll keep our parks the way they are.
And with that, I hand it over to Joyce Hoagie for the rest of the questions.
Oh, hi, Eddie. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Joyce?
I'm pretty good, thanks. Thank you so much for attending and for your patience. This is a new forum for all of us. Our parks budget has been slashed. As mayor, what would you do to restore some equitable portions of the budget?
So we will begin to raise the parks budget by about 10% every year, so we get back to 1% in the budget. I'm going to talk a little bit about some entrepreneurial things I think we can do with parks a little later down the line, because I think there's some questions that talk to that. But I think it's important that I can leverage my academic and my entrepreneurial ability to work with organizations so we can have grants and so we can have other mechanisms of funding. The reality is we are in a budget deficit, but that doesn't mean we can't find resources of capital in other places. But our parks are, I think, our lifeblood to our schools. It's especially the Bronx. You know, I don't think I would have known what I would have done with parks either growing up or my family wouldn't. So I think completely valuable. And I think we raise it at a slight raise every year so we can get back to that 1% that we're accustomed to.
Okay, now what do you know about the Van Cortlandt Park filtration plant?
Is this the Croton filtration plant?
Yes.
I know a little bit. You know, I think we spent what $3 to $4 billion on the filtration plant, somewhere along those lines. You know, I know a little bit about the history. I think it goes back to about 1890 with Frank Edison when they put the old aqueduct in there. So for me, I think it is important that we upgraded the filtration system. You know, what I would say is, I do think we need to look at implementing something where we understand the effects environmentally on these projects, though, as well. I don't think we should go as far as something as CEQA, say in California, but I am working on something right now where we're going to have a master planning department for the city. I'm working with different infrastructure engineers, different academics. So I think it's important that we upgrade the system, that we have filtration of water, and clean drinking water. But I think we also need to understand the environmental effects of projects like this over a 30 to 50 year period. Because I don't know how, I mean, you will know better than I will, but the data from 1890 until now, I would love to see the effects from that aqueduct and to understand why, one, it took so long for the upgrade, and now what the effects are going to be over the next 20 to 30 years.
And I just saw in the chat, someone had mentioned, someone who knows, that it was terribly over budget.
I would agree with that. I actually would, so put it this way, if I were to do, this is a good example, if I were to do this project, I would probably subsidize parts of it with public-private partnerships. So there are technologies and there are solutions where maybe the project shouldn't be $3 billion in public capital, but maybe should be 1.2 or 3 billion in public capital. And then we can have public-private partnerships from, say, like a Google or a Microsoft, or even, you know, my colleagues at Purdue University. We can come up with different R&D that we can integrate. So I do think that is extremely expensive for a project of that nature. However, I think the project is important. So before we impulsively integrate or build projects like this, I think we need to be a little bit more thoughtful on the cost spending and understand how we can find different capital, so then we can you know, use that money for other budgets that and other needs that the park must have, like increasing our staffing or you know, having other water resiliency projects.
Now, you say you understand the need for parks. Of course, this is the Bronx Park Speak Up. I have one site, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but we call it Pier 5 in the Bronx. It's in the lower Bronx at 149th Street. And this parcel, which was just about 5 acres, was designated as an expansion of Mill Pond Park. Because even though Mill Pond Park is a lovely park and it was built as part of the Yankee Stadium development project, the developer ran out of money, but all the maps indicated that that parcel would be expanded into parkland. Well, fast forward a few years, that parcel was given over, surrendered by the Parks Department to the Small Business Administration, who then gave it to EDC, who then gave it to a developer to build multi-story housing. And I think there's going to be a very small sliver of green space built around that. How do you feel about that?
I think it's wrong, and I know exactly where you're talking about. I'm actually on 152nd in Amsterdam right now, so I'm not in the Bronx, but I'm in West Harlem, so I know where you are specifically. We cannot just give up land to developers, and to be honest, this is going to hit home to me pretty soon, because I think Kingsbridge is one of the next places where developers want to come. So when you look at Pier 5, did you say? Sorry.
Yes.
And you know,
Bronx Point, but it's
yeah.
Pier 5.
Right. So that is just inappropriate, right? We can't allow developers just to be to ravage the rest of our communities, whether that's going through Brooklyn, but now Bronx is going to be the next sort of development hub for developers. They're going to come and try to leverage spaces so they can build to make money for themselves, and we just can't do that. We cannot use park land for developer profits in any way, form, or shape. However, there are ways to engage with developers, right? Like you can still keep our park spaces and build community spaces and schools around them, so then they can find higher IRR and revenue in other places. I think to just impulsively give land up and promise things that are incorrect is wrong. And there's ways around that. You know, we can build community land trusts. So our community members then have a little bit of authority over that land. And we need to put these mechanisms in place because it's unfair to our communities. And parks in the Bronx have been a part of us since Frank Edson, like I said, since 1890s. And the green is representative of who we are as a borough, and we can't allow for that to happen. And I'm the only candidate living in the Bronx, so I'm going to protect my home, that's for sure.
Thank you, Joyce. Do you want to ask the same questions you asked Ms. Garcia to Mr. Cullen?
Well, I can, but I think I get a sense of, but okay, I will do that. Last summer, our seasonal parks budget was eliminated, and the amount of garbage that was collected all over our parks was just out of control, frankly. Our group, BCEQ, granted $5,000 to local parks groups funding to kickstart up cleanup. Will you strongly support the doubling of the seasonal hiring from 2018 for this next fiscal year? And how would you implement that?
Yes. So 2 points to your question. One, I would double the staffing, and then over time, as the revenue jumps, hopefully as I raise the budget, then we can allow for even more staffing the following year. To your other point, I think the procurement process and how we get funding from the city is incorrect and wrong too. So what I would do is implement, if you have your smartphone and everyone gets Amber Alerts, I actually have a friend who built a technology very established, and I would use a two-way Amber Alert for people to access social services and capital, and that would include nonprofits. So there's no waiting time for when you spend $5,000 and you don't get reimbursed by the city. So yes, I would increase staffing, and it would be reflective of how I increase the budget for our parks. And then second, how the city is able to enable you to get capital, I would improve that process.
So you would support raising the staff levels to 5,000?
Yes.
I think that's a reasonable number for Bronx parks.
I think so, but I think over time, if I implement some of the entrepreneurial things that I want to do, we're going to need more staffing than that. And I'll talk to that to some of the questions I think that Robert had. I think when we get to him.
Okay, well, thank you so very much for your time. And
thank you, Joyce. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for helping us in this part. And now again, we have Dr. Fanucci with the Q&As. Take it over.
Thank you, Eddie. It's nice to meet you. I'm a fellow Kingsbridge guy. I'm sure we've run into each other at Eddie Earrings at some point. So I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to ask you about your support for the Harlem River Greenway, a project that connects Albany to Van Cortlandt Park to the South Bronx. What will you do as mayor to make sure that community organizations like those represented here get support for their efforts to make sure that we have a continuous greenway?
So I would do it in a three-step process. One, I would actually take the leaders from your community organizations and match you up with academia. So meaning from Purdue, from CUNY, from Fordham, from MIT, I would actually have you guys author and write a number of different white papers so then we can understand exact budgeting and exact costs. I think one of the other projects I'm really excited about is the Bruckner Underpass Greenway. I think, seeing pictures of that and, the possible projection of it. So what I would do is just bring in different public-private partners to increase that project and make sure it comes to fruition. And I think greenery and how we pretty much implement this system is important. And I think looking at every budget cost item as well, because I don't want to run into the same problem that we had with the Croton Aqueduct, where we ended up spending $3 to $4 billion on the project. I think it's important to look at cost, look at analysis, but I would bring in academia, I would bring in partners. I would be more of a mediator rather than someone that would control the project, because I'm not the expert. You guys are the experts on this. And I would just help kind of control the flow of that implementation.
Okay, as you know, especially the Bronx Waterfront is getting a lot of attention from developers, and that's because of the work that Bronx Council Environmental Quality has done to designate it in a brownfield opportunity area, as well as community organizations that have fought for parkland along. So as this becomes deindustrialized, it is the new area that the city is looking to develop. And we've also seen, as Joyce mentioned, that we're losing green spaces. What kinds of policies will you direct EDC to promote, because they're the ones putting out the RFPs? What policies will you direct the economic development engines of the city to do to ensure that parks and green spaces are part of every development opportunity along the waterfront and throughout the Bronx?
So this goes to the master planning department that I would open from an infrastructure standpoint. I'm going to require that every single project from an EDC or RFP standpoint have a percentage of being green in parks. I do have experience with this, not in New York though. So I'm actually helping to build something out in Chula Vista. We're building a 383-acre campus for schools. 40% of that is going to be green spaces and parks, because I do think open space lends itself to a healthier human and industrialized environment. I actually helped accelerate over about 850 startups through an organization called Grand Central Tech, which is now company.co in the middle of Manhattan, actually run by a Bronx family, the Milstein family, and I helped build these startup communities, and I work with academia. So we need to look at the master planning to require that these organizations have a percentage of it allocated to parks, and we need to hold it true. We can't run into a Pier 5 situation like Joyce ran into, where land is just given up at the very end of a development process because there's loopholes within that development process. Since I've helped develop things and I've been around parks my whole life in the Bronx, I'll know the ins and outs and where the loopholes are to catch this. And I'm just going to require that any bid that comes in we're going to look at, and if no parks are green or a part of it, then it's not going to get built because we can't do blind development just for the sake of revenue. We have to look at the community long haul and the community impact over a long period of time. So longitudinally study what these projects look like. So that's my perspective. I would have a master planning department. Percentages would be allocated through these RFP processes where we are required to have green spaces and parks. And I would work with organizations like yours just to understand if that's practical from an implementation standpoint, so we can understand the costs that we're implementing through these projects.
Okay, next question is a two-parter. The first question is whether you believe that the $200 million for parks was a good deal for the Croton filtration plant. As you know, with the Northwest, North Central Bronx, Northeast Bronx, it's been a huge game changer. So my question is, do you think that was a good deal to take the $200 million in exchange for park alienation that went beyond a park alienation? Number one. Number two, what does that say about the way we fund capital and expense items? What would you do to change the structure, the way that parks expense and capital is funded? So first, do you agree that that was the right deal to make $200 million? Secondly, what would you do to make sure that we have more dedicated revenue for expense and capital?
Great. So I actually don't think it was a good deal, and here's why. I think when you just give flat out money at a $200 million rate, and this goes back to my startup knowledge on selling a company, I think there should be a return to the community over a period of time. So if I were to do a deal along the lines of that, let's say you did want to give away that park space for $200 million and you wanted to build, say that was a decision, what I would probably do is give something about $100 million, but then there would be 25 to 30% on return on the development that would happen. So then there would actually be long-term revenues for the park and the organization. We can't blindly just give away land or blindly give away resources for certain projects. There has to be an even greater return for organizations that give up space that are lended to the community. Do I think the Croton Aqueduct, I have to read a little bit more because I'm not a complete expert, but I understand the premise. But I don't think we need to just build these projects with huge capital expenses without understanding the return and using other different capital sources. We need to have innovative capital stacks.
So what would you do to change the way the parks budget is presently funded?
So I would actually bring in different partnerships. So here's an example. One thing that I'm working on right now is potentially the Rugby World Cup and bringing rugby and sport tourism to the parks. So I would actually integrate different programming and different revenue options so that we can elevate our parks over 10 to 20 year periods. So I'd bring our park budgets up to 10% year over year, get back to where we were, but then I would look for additional revenue streams. But we can't build the programming based on blind programming. It has to come from the communities and the parks that we have, because the park across the street from where I am right now is going to be way different than Van Cortlandt Park. But I guarantee you we can invite, say, a partnership between a Nike or a Google and create some sort of cricket, open tournament where we bring in tourism for the next 20 years, as long as it's environmentally safe. So we don't leverage our parks enough to bring revenue to our city, and we can do that. But we need to do it in a sustainable and environmental way. So that would be kind of my premise on how I would look at the parks budget. For the first 6 months, I would actually go through every line item budget by budget, budget line item, so then we can understand other mechanisms of funding, because our parks are a huge resource to the city. Since they're so limited and scarce as well, we can leverage them to bring new revenues to each borough.
Thank you. Can I just get a poke from our panelists? How much time do we have for Q&A from the floor? You can chat me privately. Because are we okay? Can I ask one more question? Just to round out the exact number of questions I asked previous candidate.
I'm saying yes.
Okay, go ahead. All right. So my last question from the audience, on behalf of the audience, is that parks have become a sanctuary, and that often people find that they find benefits there that are not strictly within the park's budget. I asked Ms. Garcia about what she would do as mayor on an interagency basis to make sure that programs are funded and other agencies have a stake in keeping parks clean. What collateral synergistic uses do you see for parks that would make sure that parks is not alone in maintaining its green space and in promoting the benefits of green space? So
I think interagency collaboration is very important. I'm going to pull something out of that's not parks, so you can understand where I'm coming from. Back in the 1920s, there was someone named Jimmy Walker who was our mayor, and to regulate boxing and get funding into boxing, he took every stakeholder, referees, matchmakers, boxers, sat them down at the table, and then for 6 months, they came up with rules and regulations for boxing. So I would take some sort of similar approach to that. I would bring down every agency. We would take 3 to 6 months to come up with a master plan. And then that master plan would be implemented throughout the course of my administration. So, a good example maybe, I actually will look to implement a deputy mayor of homelessness, right? I'm not sure in terms of the numbers on the Bronx, but our homeless has probably spent a lot of time in our parks over the last year because of COVID. What can we do with maybe the deputy mayor of homelessness that I bring about, and then make sure that we can bring our homeless, put them into homes, and then reserve the greenery in our spaces. So that's one example. I would also look to maybe work with the EDC, which I've done a lot of work with before in the past, to implement things such as sport tourism, or implement such things as public-private partnerships for projects like the Croton Aqueduct. So interagency collaboration is extremely important, especially with the COVID response. We're just getting out of this. In the next 4 to 5 years, the next mayor is going to have to come up with new collaborative ways to bring people together. So I would just sit everyone down, and I think we should literally listen to organizations and people like Joyce or you or Karen, Chauncey. You're going to understand what the needs are of the parks, and I guarantee you your perspective now is way different than March 2020 before COVID hit. So I bet you have just different perspectives and thoughts of what has gone on with the parks. And as any good entrepreneur or business person or teacher, gather the facts and the data first, then understand how to implement a solution. I think it would be careless for me to say, we're going to do this, this, and this. No. We're going to sit down and have interagency collaboration, get to a focal point where we can all collaborate, and then implement that solution and do it thoughtfully and respect the process. But understand that we also have to move fast, because we're going to see the unforced and backhand nature of what the COVID pandemic has done for us. So that's my perspective. Interagency collaboration means sit down, series of meetings, come up with white papers with academics, implement, and do it in a sustainable and satisfactory way where every stakeholder is okay with it.
Well, thanks. That closes out our Q&A from the floor. It's been a pleasure to get to know you. It's glad we have your ear. Annalise, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Fanucci. Thank you, Eddie, Colin, for your great answers, and all panelists, Joyce and Dark Westfall. And Eddie, we want, please, if you have, we want to give you some time for final remarks, and please go ahead.
So the Bronx is my home, right? I've been here my whole life. My family's been here for way too long, I think. And I've been in the community for a long period of time. So I never ran this race to go, I can't wait to run for mayor. I'm super excited about it. This was me going, wow, I just saw a woman and her daughter go into the CVS on 238th and Broadway in the foyer and go to sleep crying because they lost their restaurant jobs. That is true. I literally just saw really, really tough things going on. And I've never run for office before. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an educator. No matter what, I'm gonna wanna help the Bronx, right? So win or lose, I wanna help. So, no matter what, I still wanna be engaged with your organization. I still wanna help Van Cortlandt. I wanna see those cricket games, when I'm walking by near the tortoise and the rabbit hair statue, right there. So for me, this is just part of who I am, and the Bronx will always be a part of who I am and my family. I talk about my mom's side and my grandfather and their brothers a lot, but I also talk about, my dad. My grandfather drove a bus down Broadway all the way down to 138th Street for 60 years. So I've been here for a long time. I understand we have a lot of challenges around climate, around parks. I think food insecurity, 2 out of 5 people in the South Bronx don't have food. We have real problems. This is not, for me, a political race. This is, if we don't solve them, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. This isn't the 70s. I think, it's 2021, but where we need to find solutions, and we got to find them now, because people are actually hurting. People are in a bad place. People don't have food. They don't have homes. Our parks I think, are getting destroyed, but by no one should be to blame for this. This is just a natural disaster that kind of happened to us. So I think we all need to come together, work together. The Bronx will always be my home. I will walk around and still I'll probably get a slice of pizza from Sam's Pizza later when I leave out of here. So I'm really appreciative just to be here and thankful to everybody. And no matter what, I'm going to help at any point. So literally you can email me at any point, eddie@eddiecullen.com. Shoot me a message and I'll always reply. It might take me a little bit because I have a lot going on now, but I will always respond and get back to you and be there. So thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. and looking forward to what we can do for the Bronx.
Thank you, Eddie. And, you know, I don't have a long family history here in the Bronx, but from all places that I have lived in United States, the Bronx have become my second home. So thank you, you know, whether it's a long-standing Bronx resident or just a new resident like me, we love the Bronx. So thank you so much for this. And I understand that we have a singer with us. His name is Parker Gambino, and you have to listen to this and have a great question, a great sing for us. Take it away, Parker.
Backs out.
Here's he's going, preparing. Thank you so much, Parker. Wonderful singing.
Yes, as I mentioned in the early show, I'm also running for the position of minstrel for the Bronx. The song called Speak Up for Your Park, composed for this occasion. You gotta speak up for your park, that's what you've gotta do. If you neglect and don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark, if you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. Now I came up in the boogie down Bronx, they call it Kingsbridge Heights. By the age of 3, Mom was showing me old Fort Park's delights. My focus went no further than the leaves beneath my shoes. All different sizes, shapes, and rainbow colors and hues. The swings, and in the summertime, sprinkler was on, no doubt. And I really dug not hockey when the parky would break it out. It added up to what became an inspiration spark. When I was too young to have a tongue to speak up for my park, you gotta speak up for your park. That's what you gotta do. If you neglect and don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark. If you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. When I got a little bit older, to the pigeon park I went. I kissed a few girls behind the trees, but always with their consent. That wasn't the only attraction, but I got into sports. I wore out plenty Chuck Taylors, running up and down the basketball courts. I had to personalize them, orange shoelaces for me. And you would call the foul on yourself out of basic courtesy. We all could play the whole darn day, only quitting when it got dark. And I was starting to grasp the need to speak up for my park. You gotta speak up for your park. That's what you gotta do. If you neglect and don't expect the park to be there for you. If you wanna leave a legacy, if you wanna make your mark. If you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. Acorns for squirrels, squirrels for hawks. That's the way the food web rolls. And you better believe that we're a part of it, along with the mice and the moles. So be thankful that mosquitoes are a dragonfly's favorite meal. They scarf them in the water, in the air. That's their predatory deal. Let's put in some helpful plants along the garden trail. Milkweed for the monarchs, fennel for the swallowtail. To make a place for them to grow in our urban Noah's Ark. So they will be included when we speak up for the park. You gotta speak up for the park. That's what you gotta do. If you neglect and don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark. If you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. I may be so bold, I'm not too old to spit a decent flow. Just think Bronx River, Tibbetts Brook, you'll be in the know. You can bet your boots if you dig the roots, there's people to enlist. All those Bronx celebrities, now tell me if there's any I missed. Sonia Sotomayor sits on the highest bench. Comedian Mr. Robert Klein is just about the ultimate mensch. Gangsters can change behavior, Fat Joe's no longer so fat. Jenny from the block, who rides a 6, can really go to bat. Kemba Walker, Cardi B, commentary chats. Let's get them to go in with us some celebrity razzmatazz. You gotta speak up for your part, that's what you gotta do. If you neglect and don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark. If you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. You gotta speak up for your park, that's what you gotta do. If you neglect and don't expect the park to be there for you. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to make your mark. If you want to do good for the neighborhood, speak up for your park. Speak up for your park. Speak up.
Wow, what a great song, Parker. And I think this is it for us. Please, if you want to stay, we're gonna promote everyone, and we're gonna have a networking session for people to network in Zoom. We appreciate Mr. Cullen for your patience and for your answers, and have a great day, everyone. Have been a pleasure.